Who wants to open up in prayer today? Somebody.
How about Linda? You want to open up in prayer,
Okay.
Linda?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes.
Okay. Toda Abba, for your great love for your children. We thank you for the privilege of gathering here together to learn. We invite you to be amongst us. We invite you to be our teacher. Thank you for this vessel. May Eric's heart be open to your every thought and word that you would have him share with us today. We are so grateful for your blessings and your love. B'Shem Yeshua. Hallelujah.
So be it.
Amen.
All right. I'm going to turn my camera off and we'll see you in an hour.
All right. So last week, we were talking about this, which we're calling the Yhuh Echad poster. And it's basically 10 inches by 30, I believe, at eriktologyprints, Prints. There's another poster the exact same size with a horizontal reference, which I called the Rosetta Stone poster, which basically has the Paleo Hebrew across the middle, Mishkan pattern at the bottom, the modern Hebrew at the top. And for those who are unfamiliar with the Rosetta Stone, it was actually an artifact. I think it was written from Sumer, I think. One of the most ancient, maybe it was Assyria. Anyway, the point is, up in northern Iraq, a governmental decree written in 3 languages. And so it reconciled the mystery between hieroglyphics and cuneiform and might be Akkadian, one other ancient language. When seeing the 3 languages telling the same decree, they were able to say, oh, this equals this and this equals this. And it blew open how to properly read hieroglyphics. The whole reason for me calling that poster the Rosetta Stone poster is because when I saw back in 2005 that the pattern of the Mishkan was the same as the pattern of the 7 days of creation in Genesis 1. The Mishkan is found in Exodus 25. And then the Moedim of Leviticus 23. Well, there's 3 things that are telling the same story. So calling it the Mishkan pattern, that's actually a phrase used. It's Tabanit Mishkan. Tav, Bet Nun Yod, Tav is the word Tabanit, which is pattern. I'd found this pattern in 2004, and then in 2005 was looking at the letters of the alphabet and realized that the whole center section of the alphabet between Het and Zadi were identical to the pattern in alphabetical sequence order. Perfect fit. And then you look at the word Tabanit and you realize that the word Bet Nun Yod, which is in between the 2 letters Tav, so the letter Tav is a prefix and a suffix, and the word right in the middle captured or mediating, you might say, the relationship between the 2 signatories of a contract is Beni, which is my son. So embedded within this word of Tabanit is my son mediating the signers of this relationship, those who sign up for it, like Yahuwah and Israel, or Adam and Yahuwah. Any 2 people have to come to terms of a relationship. What's the dynamic, whether it's a contract or a marriage or even parent and child or 2 siblings. It's like, how do you stage the dynamic, whether it's let's take turns listening to each other. Some people, I know you have a feather or something here. If you're holding the feather, you get to talk and everybody else has to let you talk. That type of a thing. It's just rules of conduct. As far as Yhuh is concerned, it's, if you don't listen to my voice when I speak, then I won't listen to your voice when you speak. So there's a dynamic. We'll get in this a little bit. Any word that's spelled with a DI as a prefix or a BI, dynamic, bifurcate, biannual. I mean, it means there's two. The letter DI and the letter BI are both, whether they're Latin prefixes or English. It was interesting. There was a fellow by the name of Len Horowitz, Dr. Len Horowitz. I saw him speak probably 15, 20 years ago. He's written a number of books. An associate of his, Dr. Joseph Puleo, was given the discovery of the solfeggio tones. The primary tone is 528, which Len is actually, in his books that he's written, Joseph Puleo is deceased now, but the color of this vibrant green of young plant growth and the musical frequency are both exactly 528. In other Hertz frequency numbers, the music and the color are different, but that one, they both synchronize, he was saying. I was watching this video the other day of a talk that he gave, and he was saying that in the 1500s, maybe the 1550s or so, English is not what we know of it today. As a matter of fact, if you look at some ancient writer of English like Chaucer, it's written so strangely, it's hard to wrap your mind around. It's hard to even recognize that it was the English language. So the English language as we know it was actually constructed and then perpetuated by the use of the King James Bible. And what Mr. Horowitz is saying is that the gematria of the Hebrew, which is also true of Greek, that Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel 3, Dalet 4. Well, that's just the letters in sequence order. The first letter, the second letter, the third letter. But this study of gematria, 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 which some people turn into some type of numerology or its own field of study, is very specifically a reality of Hebrew. Now, I had never heard of this word until about 1999, I think. There was a fellow that was speaking with the Prophecy Club, and he mentioned that you can use this gematria only in English if it's the King James Authorized Edition or Authorized Version Cambridge Edition, and it's like the gematria works in English, but no other English will remain true. But you can use gematria in Hebrew and in Greek, and it's like, what's the point? When you total up the numbers associated with the letters and then reduce them down to a single digit. So if you have the number 10, that's a 1 and a 0. Well, 1 plus 0 equals 1, so 10 goes back to equal 1. If you have the number 412, 412, well, you add those together, 4 plus 1 plus 2, that's 7. So the gematria boiled down essence of 412 is actually 7. Anyway, you can do that, so you end up with 9 digits. And so Len Horowitz was saying the entire universe is composed of 9 numerals. Somebody invented the number 0 that didn't exist, and whether that's completely true or it's like the whole universe is built with 9 digits. Well, that's Len Horowitz's study. I'm mentioning his name, so you want to chase that down. It's very interesting. But he was saying then that there's 9 tones, 9 frequencies, which also construct or build the entire universe. So, and I believe it was 2017 in Ohio at Jim Fincham's place, we had something we called the Energy Conference, where we're talking about such things as frequency, resonance, vibration. And I made a whole list. I didn't elaborate, but I said, here, you could research these things and find out about them, having to do with essential oils and tones, which are healing frequencies. Tesla was involved. the study of cymatics. I've mentioned that here a few times. And I say that because the people like the Rife, R-I-F-E, Dr. Rife, he made a Rife machine. The people that have studied these things have found that if you, Dr. Emoto, E-M-O-T-O, working with Len Horowitz, Japanese scientists, if you think a thought, it projects energy. And what is energy? It's molecules that are moving, resonating, vibrating, spinning. And if you have the intent behind a thought or a voice projection or music, it has effect. Is that true? How come we're not taught this? What Len Horowitz was saying is that the people that know about or knew about 1500s, knew about this stuff, decided to bundle it up and obfuscate it, hide it, seal it, het tov mem, enclose it. So in studying Daniel 12, Daniel was told by the archangel Gabriel, hide the words and seal the book till the time of the end. End of what? We might think, oh, that's the end of the world. It doesn't say it's the end of the world. That's just what we might think. So the question is, end of what? Well, it wasn't until 2004 that I ever heard of this thing called the 2,730-year curse, which we've mentioned many times. And I was just in contact with a couple people this week who said, wow, I just found this eriktology stuff. This one fellow said he started watching in November and was trying to catch up and watch all this stuff. So occasionally I'll mention things. It's like, gosh, he keeps going over the same thing. Well, the reason why is because there's people that haven't seen this stuff before. And so I'll just tag a reference. You can go research it if you want. Back in 2009, I was with a friend in Jerusalem, and we were standing on this thing they call the, I think it was the Palisade or the, anyway, it was this long walkway. There's the, I think it was the Kidron Valley, and then there's the walls of Jerusalem over there. And we're just standing there looking at this. This was the area that I believe a great war against Jerusalem had been waged. It might have been Rome at one time, but it is where they set up their encampment, the Romans, I believe. Anyway, the point is, I'm just standing there looking at the city, and a guy walked up, a man and an older lady, and he says, hey, can I tell you what you're looking at or anything? I mean, it was just a nice guy. You know, obviously Jerusalem's full of tourists. And what are you guys doing here? Well, we're here for the Moed, for the festival. Oh, you're Jewish? No. Well, then why are you here? For the Moed, it's instructed. And it's like, yeah, but you're not Jewish. And it's like, well, don't you know about the Great Return? It's like, what are you talking about? Well, we're here because it's the end of the 2,730-year curse. And he's like, what? So we start talking to this guy, and he says, I've never heard of such a thing. And he says, if anybody would have ever heard of such a thing, it would have to be my mother, this woman standing here. And she was like, she's never heard of the 2,730-year curse. What are you talking about? And I said, well, we just might be the beginning of a whole wave, an influx of people coming back to the Torah, coming back to the Moed to visit here in Jerusalem as instructed. So what is this? So in Leviticus 26, Yhuh says to Israel, I've given you my instructions. Now, if you don't listen, if you find my ways to be abhorrent, reprehensible, loathsome, disgusting, or whatever, casual disregard, then I'm going to multiply the curse like the vow 7 times. And then he goes on to describe what the curse is going to look like. Like the vow. Well, the word 7, spelled Shin Bet Ayin, in Hebrew, is the number 7, but it also means vow, and it also means curse. So it also means oath or vow. It also means how to fulfill the vow, which is to say, fulfilled, complete, full, satisfied, and the word surfeited, like the surf of the ocean, which is to say, here's the waves, the water, and then the boiling foam surf, the abundance over the top. Anyway, the point is, the word for the number 7 is not only the idea of how the vow is fulfilled. So when Elohim, Yhuh says that he gives good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. Those are four aspects of the way he measures things. That's all definitions of the number 7. Good measure, which is to say nobody's cheating anybody. It's packed full, pressed down, shaken together, overflowing. But that's also then how the curse is going to happen. In other words, if you get cursed, you're going to get really smacked really hard. Well, then he goes on in Leviticus 26 to elaborate what the curse is going to look like. And 4 different times, Yahweh says, and this is what it's going to look like. And if you still refuse to come back to my ways, if you still find my ways to be detestable, then I'm going to crank it up a little bit more. And this is what it's going to look like, describing the curse. And yet, if you persist in turning away from me, I'm going to crank it up. And he does that 4 times. Okay. Well, part of this study is to say in the symbology, or in the story is a symbology. And we'll get to that with the word that I left off with last week was Samik Nun Bet Vav Tet Yod Nun, which is the word right down here. I'll address that in a couple minutes. But what I'm saying is, so we have a picture, we have a narrative, something happens, okay? And we think we're just reading the story and that's just what happened. But what I found is that all through the scripture, Elohim has embedded symbology, a word, an image that means something else that adds to the story. And the more you know scripture, even the narrative, and the more you know Hebrew, it's almost like this game of discovery. Back in the days when I was a kid, we were playing with a deck of cards, play this game called concentration. You take 1 or 2 decks. So you have 50 cards or 52 or 104. You turn them over face down, and then you turn over 2 cards. And if they match, oh, I got that one, and you set it aside. And if you turn over a couple and then you turn them over face down, and somebody else takes their turn, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, they turned over that card. Where was it that I saw that one? I think it was here. And it helps develop your memory. Well, so you can do the same thing with scripture verses. It's like, there was a word. What was the synonym of that word? Or in the dictionary, where did I see that? Or wait a minute, there was the same imagery. So one of the pictures I was going to have Kurt put up is that there was this picture of a split rock that somebody found in a place called Horeb in Saudi Arabia. And they believe, oh, this is the rock that Moshe hit with his rock. It was his stick, his staff. The rock split open, water gushed out, formed a pool. 3 million people were given drink from that rock. And then a later occasion at the same rock, he was told to speak to the rock and water would gush out. Of course, he hit it with a stick and the water did come out, but he got in big trouble for that. My point is that there it is. And my friend Pete found in South Dakota another rock that looked virtually identical. And it's like, was there another story that happened in South Dakota? That's on, I believe it was the Sioux Indian Native American tribe. That's their sacred lands, Black Hills of South Dakota. And it's like, why does that look the same? I don't know, but the fact that it looks the same, just tagging, hey, this one reminds me of that one, reminds me of this, is what I'm trying to reference. So Elohim says 4 times that he's going to crank up the curse, multiply it by 7. Well, the number 4 is the 4th letter, which is Dalet. Well, what's Dalet? Well, Dalet's a door. So my mind goes, well, wait a minute. Does that mean he gives Israel, and this is the northern kingdom, because the southern kingdom was given a different situation. So in Leviticus 26, it was the nation collective as a whole, the 12 tribes. You jump ahead to Ezekiel chapter 4, and there's a distinction between the northern kingdom and the southern. And Ezekiel is supposed to lay on his side, pointing at this picture of this siege, this war against Jerusalem, and he says, lay on your side 40 days, a day for a year. It's a 40-year punishment, you might say, lockdown. Go stand in the corner, as it were, we were told as kids. And then for the northern king, he laid on his other side and pointed at 290 days. That's a year, no, 390 days, a year and a month. Well, The northern kingdom never came back. The southern kingdom came back, hence you have the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, where they came back from Babylon and resettled Jerusalem and rebuilt the temple and all. But the northern kingdom never came back, as if to say, why wouldn't they come back? Well, they didn't care. They found Yahuwah's ways to be detestable, abhorrent, loathsome, whatever, the casual disregard of like Yahweh and his Moedim, his festivals, his Sabbath day. Are you kidding me? And it's still perpetuated today, which is why people who think they love God and are his people, are the bride of Christ, don't know his name, don't care about his day, don't regard his Moedim festivals, have a disregard of his ancient covenant, and claim to be a completely different people group, as if the first people group were a stench to Yahweh himself and are essentially just shoveled off to burn in the lake of fire for eternity, to be replaced by this new group of people who don't have to do anything he ever said. Is that true? Is that a reality? Well, it's a reality that's taught, but is it a reality that that's the facts of the way this universe is built? So if the northern kingdom never came back, then according to Leviticus 26, the 390-year curse would have had to been multiplied by 7. Well, 7 times 390 is 2,730. So if you take 721 BC, when Assyria had conquered the northern kingdom, and add 2,730, you come up with 2009, the difference between 721 BC and adding 2009, but there was no year zero, so you got to add a year. That brings you to 2010. That's the 2,730-year curse, which I'd never heard of until 2004 at Sukkot, which is the same year that I was talking about this Mishkan pattern. I'd never heard of it my whole life. And like I say, this lady in Jerusalem that would have known, didn't know, never heard of it. So a lot of people don't know about this. So the point is, if Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end, the word end is kuf zadi. What does that mean? Well, you look in the dictionary and it means more than just end. It means if you're on a roadway and you come to a T intersection where you, at the end of this trajectory, and now you have to turn right or left, you're at a decision. You're at a dalet. You're at a door. It's not a door that opens up. It's a turn right or left. It's a determination. So dalet's a door. So was Israel given 4 different doors or opportunities to come back to the covenant, and they didn't? Collectively at large, millions of people scattered across the face of the earth. The collective consciousness of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, was to say, no, we're not going to return. So they reveled in their alienation and became known to some as Celts or barbarians, or taking on national identities, East and West. Well, that's the world history for the last 2,730 years. But why did it happen? Since the days of David, which is approximately 900 BC, and this is 721 BC, that's 200 years. So 2,730 plus another 200, that's nearly 3,000 years since the glory days of King David and Solomon, that everything started spinning out, going nuts. Pagan, heathen, idolatry, and offense to Yahweh. And it was only when it got so bad, he says, that's it. It's so bad that I'm sending in the Assyrians to tear you guys apart and to ruin all your stupid culture of Elohim Akrim, gods of others, other gods, everything with hideous practices that I won't even mention. They did worse than the Canaanites. See the movie Apocalypto? It was worse than the Mayans. Israel was doing worse travesties against humanity, inhuman things to each other and to other people, and it was like Yahweh just had to tear it apart. The point is, for nearly 3,000 years, and then this curse was imposed, you might say, to cleanse the consciousness of how many generations to just get it out of us. Okay, 2010 was the end of that curse. So did Daniel hide the words and seal the book till the end of that curse? Well, the word Yod Kuf Zadi. Kuf Zadi is the end, like coming to an intersection, coming to a T intersection. It also means to turn a corner. But Yod Kuf Zadi, you put a prefix letter Yod in front of the Kuf Zadi, and it's Ikutz, which is summer harvest. Well, wait a minute. He talked about late harvested fruit or summer harvest near the time of the end of the world in the New Testament. Or talk about the fig tree putting out little tender edges. Hey, the time is near. So even though it's not the end of the world, it's the end of something which is a transition, a doorway, a threshold into this whole other phase of world history that no one's ever seen before. No one even knows what to anticipate. So if we are sitting here saying, well, is it going to be like the olden days? No, there's a verse that we mentioned where Yahweh says it'll be more resh bet or more resh bet than it was before. Well, resh bet means multiplied. So there'll be more people than there was before, but resh bet rab, like we get the word rabbi, can also mean important or regarded with great significance. So the promise is that when Israel comes back to Yahuwah's ways, Israel will be more significant than it was. And it in Solomon's days, it had worldwide influence, not just in the Middle East, but Solomon's ships apparently went all around the world. And whether it's a circle or a pancake, either way, it circumnavigated the earth. Well, wait a minute. How does that fit into eschatology? Eschatology is the study of end times. Well, it doesn't. Anytime that I read books or heard sermons or heard people on TV or the radio talk about eschatology from a Christian point of view, what's in front of us right now is either the tribulation or the rapture. The end of the world, tribulation meaning the Antichrist, the false prophet, the beast, the devil incarnate, ruling with prison camps and Holocaust and Inquisition. Gosh, get us out of here, please, first. No, wait a minute. What about the restoration of Israel? Not even on the map. Not even on the map. So a couple months ago, we were talking about this series, Building a Consciousness. Well, what was that about? By looking at these letters and realizing this is a map of human history on the face of the earth. It's not just a list of alphabet letters. It's not just a list of numbers. It's not just the story of Yeshua in the gospel narrative coming down here and getting crucified, being entombed 3 days and 3 nights, rising from the dead, rising up into the sky and coming back, which it's that too. But it's also a map of human history. Well, where are we? Suddenly it's really significant. Going back to what Len Horowitz was saying about the English language in the 1550s, is that they reversed the number value and reading from left to right instead of right to left, which they were probably already doing. The Greeks actually changed that back in about 300 BC or 500 BC. Right around the same time Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the books, the Greeks, the ancient Greek alphabet's identical to Paleo-Hebrew, the Phoenician version, other than it's in reverse order, meaning reading left to right instead of right to left, but it's virtually a mirror image, virtually. It changes the hemisphere of your brain, which one is dominant when you're reading and when you're thinking, and it sets up how you address the matters of the world. So Len Horowitz is saying, when you listen to certain tones of music for 432 hertz instead of 440 for the letter A, for the tone of the letter A on the musical scale, it changes everything. For us to recalibrate our thinking according to Hebrew instead of English, reading right to left instead of left to right, changing a couple hertz frequency numbers of a musical instrument changes everything. It's no small matter. For Israel to have the thought of regard of Yahuwah's ways changes the frequency, the vibe of the entire universe. But we don't see it. We don't know it. We don't know what effect it's having. The echo, the resonance, the vibrating like concentric ripples, as if the center of the menorah was a pebble being dropped into a pool and emanating out across the expanse, changes everything. So it's not just what we do, sitting down on Shabbat, calling upon the name Yhuh Is Echad, the Elohim of Israel, keeping his Moedim, his festivals of Leviticus 23, when he said to. For us to do those things, we think we're just walking around in circles, as it were, metaphorically, of the year. Keep Pesach and Chag HaMatzot in the spring, and then Shavuot, and then in the 6 months later, or in the fall, in the autumn, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret. Okay, then we look forward to Pesach again in the spring. What's the big deal? What was the big deal when the tribes of Israel, the soldiers, walked around Jericho 7 times and then blew their shofars? The walls fell. That's the effect. What's the effect of one little stone hitting the feet of a statue in Daniel chapter 2? Well, it's a story, it's a dream. Everything means something. Eben is spelled Aleph, Bet, Nun. Aleph is a prefix letter, means I will. Bet is to embody. Aleph, Bet is the word father, but it's also to have a verdure, a passion for something. The color green of a young shoot, a sprout of foliage, herbage in the springtime. That number 528, that's also Aleph, Bet. The essence of the meaning of Aleph, Bet is captured in the frequency Hertz number 528, which is that color of green. And then Nun is to put into action. So to put the fervor of intention, of desire, of willingness into action is Aleph, Bet, Nun. But Bet, Nun is the word son. So Aleph, Bet, Nun, the word stone, is a combination of father and son, and in unity as a oneness and a chadness. In Bet, Nun, son. Remember the voice when Yahushua was being baptized. This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. Why was he well pleased? Why was the voice from heaven well pleased with the son? And because Yeshua identified, he says, I only do what I see my father doing and only say what I hear my father saying. So Len Horowitz again was making the point by building the English language, it has not just corrupted everything, but it is blocked 95%, where he comes up with these numbers is more of the study. It's blocked 95% of our effectiveness, our reception of truth, our ability to even think and deal with or have the desire to respond to the words of Elohim. I believe that Yahuwah gave us the Moedim so that our belief is not just a faith of assent. Oh, yes, I believe that's true. I believe he created the world in 6 days and then rested on the 7th. Okay, to read the story is a certain act. To believe the story is a certain act. Well, then what? Well, go on to another story. To engage the story with our mind, our heart, and say, hey, I want to become one with this. I want to become part of this. How do I do what I see my father doing? Rest on Shabbat. Do what he said. So he gave us the Shabbat to actually be one with him by the act of resting, by the act of not working on Shabbat, is to become Echad with him. Then he gave us the Moedim, which is 7 other occasions by which to participate in Echadness, in oneness with the energy that he has put into his stuff. And he said the energy that he has put into his stuff is Kuf Nun Aleph, which is translated jealous, zealous, and fanatical. That's huge. That's the biggest expression of words that he could come up with. Kuf Nun Aleph. So he gave us the Moedim so that we can actually be engaged. It's like if you have a band of musicians and they're playing and go, wow, I wish I could be part of that band. And they walk over and they give you a block of wood and a stick. And they say, here, just tap the stick. Tap the block of wood. And you go, no, I want to play one of those instruments. This is an instrument. It's a percussion. Here, take the stick and the block of wood and tap this, synchronize with what we're playing, and you're part of the band. No, I think, listen, it's part of the band just to do what he said, just to eat unleavened bread for a week in the springtime makes us participant in the kingdom of heaven. To abide in a tent. Does that mean you sleep in it? Does that mean you sit and eat? Does that mean you sit and have conversations? All the above, some of the above, take your pick. In the fall, Sukkot, gather together. Don't work the first and last days or take the whole week off. The point is, it's us participating in the kingdom of heaven. And remember, Yeshua said, don't think that the kingdom of heaven is this coming attraction. Just wait and it'll show up one of these days. He says, no, it's within you. The kingdom of heaven is present tense right now. So for us to presently do what he said with a heart attitude to manifest his kingdom is the lit menorah, allowing his light to penetrate the darkness. And it's not waiting for another event. It's right now, present tense. To speak or learn to speak his language is the same thing. To wrap our mind around the way the language is built is also the same thing. There's something about what he built into the language. The act of seeking him, the act of pondering, meditating on his word is not just, let's think about Noah's Ark story for a few minutes. Noah took 100 years. Noah's 3 sons and their 3 wives and Noah's wife were the 8 people saved. 2 of a kind and 7 of the clean animals came onto the ark. Everybody else was killed. Rained 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, I think we've just about expanded all we can thinking about the story. Well, there's a little bit more to it. But the point is, that's about, if you're thinking about the narrative and the pieces of the story, okay, we did it. Now what? But if you go back and you get a Hebrew text and you look at every word and you look how every word is spelled, and I find Klein's dictionary to be a wonderful tool. It's not the only, because it has its limitations, but it's a wonderful tool. The point is, as you study the structure of the building of words and how certain words make you think of other words, like that game of concentration, to look at synonym words and to look at other words which are elements of the story picturesquely. Wait a minute. And you start thinking about this and thinking about that. And as somebody pointed out, as you're looking at one set of words and you'll find another word that, because it happens to be in the dictionary, I'll call that a bonus word. It's not what you're looking for, but your eye catches it and you go, oh, wait a minute. There's that benefit. Now that is the next word that I was going to discuss in this bottom left-hand corner here. One of these, call it the bonus word. I was looking at some other word. I think I was probably looking at the word hasna, which is the word written right above it in the line. Now, we talked last week about hasna being the bush. Hey, Samik Nun, hey. Well, I know that hey is a prefix letter and hey is the suffix letter. The suffix means to express or reveal or as it's seen, or that it communicates some kind of information. But the first hey, meaning the, for somebody to say the tree, the book, the cat, means they have information that they're trying to communicate to somebody else. By saying the, they're identifying a specific. That's the nature of the word the. That's the letter hey used as a prefix. So if you look at the word the bush found in Exodus 3, the burning bush, it says hasna, the bush. Well, who's the information coming from? Moshe is seeing sana, samik nun hey. But for the bush, somebody has to be designating that specific. So you could say, well, because we're talking about this alphabet coming from Elohim, he's the guy who designates the specifics. So Elohim's consciousness is the one which can identify the the-ness of something. He's the one who points to the specific. So the first hey coming in is his declaration of something, and the second hey is that something equipped to or being able to express. So for the son of Elohim, the B'nai Elohim, the Tabanit, to be the Samik Nun, the designated relay moderator, mediator, who expresses, well, that's the act of translation. Well, what's Samik and Hey? Well, Samik Hey, or Samik Nun, is bush. So the bush had to act as a translator? Was the bush the son of God? Was the bush B'nai Elohim, Tabanit? What's Samik and Nun? Well, Samik is an engineered structure, the equivalent of the menorah in the Mishkan pattern, which is like a skeleton, backbone and ribs, a tree trunk and branches, an engineered structure like a trellis, like an antenna, like the mast of a ship, the mast with the yard arms, these graphic motifs. What's Nun? Nun is shaped like a lightning bolt. It's a jump. It's a spark. It's an activity. It's a life, whether it's energized with electricity or with breathing, living vitality of life. The word Nun, Nun Vav Nun, or Nin, Nun Yod Nun, is the word translated fish, but actually Dag, Dalet Gimel is the word fish. But Nun is to multiply like fish, to multiply like the word rabbi, to become important, or to become numerous, or to become energized, like fish suddenly startled, and the fish was invisible, it's camouflage, and all of a sudden the fish darts in, oh, there it is. And so you have to put all these pictures in. So for the engineered structure to become energized is kind of like suddenly to see that the shape of the letters mean something. So hey, Samik Nun, hey, though it says the bush, translation, you could be reading it as Elohim, by the use of a messenger, a malak, mem lamed aleph kaf, angel, speaks to Moshe through the bush, hasana, that the engineered structure means something and communicates the intention from the source clearly, such that hey coming in, hey coming out, Samik Nun is a translational mechanism of understanding the structure. So what we are doing, this act of studying the alphabet, studying the meaning of the letters, studying Yeshua's narrative story fit to the letters, gives Nun to the Samik, gives meaning to the form. That's what's going on here. So this event of going back and looking at the Moedim and saying they're not just Jewish party days. There's a meaning to the structure. It's the Mishkan pattern. The 7 days that Yahuwah created the world is not just a to-do list of a random, well, I think I'll do this day 1, I think I'll do this day 2. 6 days, I guess they're all done, maybe I should rest. But they are very specific actions, correlated specifically and effective specifically. And for us to sit down on the 7th day, not randomly the 1st, but specifically the 7th, engages us. He's allowed us a seat in the co-pilot's chair, as it were, that we can be engaged in the flying of this machinery. And so what's happened in the last 2,000 years, the church, by their own voice, are proud to proclaim that they changed the day from the 7th to the 1st in order to prove, this is what they say, it's public information, in order to prove that their voice was more authoritative than the voice of Elohim speaking from Mount Sinai, or than the authority of his finger writing in the tables of stone on Mount Sinai. I was talking to some Orthodox friends the other day. It's like they have a little joke. How many Orthodox does it take to change a light bulb? Remember back in the 60s, there was a joke about a certain national group that I won't mention because it's disparaging, but how many of them guys does it take to change a light bulb? 5. 5 to change a light bulb, 1 to hold the new bulb, and 4 to pick up the ladder and turn it around. How many Orthodox does it take to change the light bulb? None. Orthodox don't change. The Orthodox are the only Christian group from the beginning when Christ was here to never change anything all the way through to today. That's how we know that they are not the Protestants, not the Catholics, but the Orthodox are the ones to trust and believe because they haven't changed anything. I agree that not changing is good, but why do they reverence Sunday as the holy day? That's a change from what Yahweh said. So they're denying their own essence, which is why I can't go along with them. Because Yahuwah said the 7th day is the Yom Kadosh, the sacred, set apart, completely other than the other 6. And that if we participate by not working, and the word shinbet means to sit, it means to return, it means to dwell, it means to repent. It means to be taken into captivity, shin vav bet, shuv, to taken into captivity. And the same word or derivative of the word is used to say he's going to return the captivity. So what he said was, through the Old Testament, he says, because you won't regard my ways, and keeping of Shabbat is proof that we're walking in his ways, because there's otherwise no other reason to do it, unless it's culture and you're an SDA, Seventh-day Adventist or something, or Jewish. But because we won't walk in his ways, and we want to work on Shabbat, he sends his people into captivity, which is a derivative of Shin Bet. And then when they repent and return to keeping Shabbat, Shin Bet, he returns their captivity, which is to say bring them back, which is also Shin Bet. So when we return, we keep his Shabbat, Shin Bet. So in Deuteronomy 30, where he talks about when you return to these words, the word return is spelled Shin Bet Tov. So you can look at that and say, what's the proof that we've returned? Shabbat. The fact that we will think to look at his stuff, take it to heart, talk about it amongst each other, ourselves, and then do what he said, engage the action, is all Shin Bet Tov. So Shabbat's not just some stupid Jewish custom or some law, legal imposition imposed on us not having any fun. It's engaging the power of the entire universe. And then Yahweh's attention turns to his people. And he said in, I can't remember where it is, one place he says, because his people won't listen to him and he's cast them aside and called in the enemy to ravage them, he says, when I see my people return to my ways and take it to their heart, listening to my voice, looking at my stuff, trying to be my people, it tears his heart. And then when he hears them cry, he says, I can't take it. And he will leap into action to rescue his people. This act of changing our mind, changing our heart, changing our behavior will certainly change the dynamic of the entire universe, because it is what compels him to shuv, to turn, to return, and to engage the dwelling with his people, the Echad. So Yahweh Echad doesn't just mean Yahweh is one, Yahweh is singular, Yahweh is unified, but it means he's not going to vary from what he said. He's not going to change from what he promised. You can count on it. So that phrase, Jo Shmo, Yashmao, he will do exactly what his Shem says he'll do. He's all about his Shem, all about the Shem. The word Shem, name, fame, renown, reputation, the occupation of all his concerns, and the word here and the word there, where he's at. Where he's at is always going to be the same. Therefore, when Yeshua came and says, I'm not doing my own thing, I'm only doing what I see my Father doing. I'm only saying what I see my Father saying. I'm not saying my own rat, rat, squawk, squawk, woof, woof. He's not making up a new covenant with a new testament. He's reiterating what his Father's always been about. It's Echad. So when somebody changes the day, that's not Echad. When they change the festivals to Christmas, Easter, and Sunday, that's not Echad. When they say Jesus Christ is our God, look, he's there in human form. And Yahweh said, no, Elohim is a spirit, and we should worship him in spirit and truth. And then he projects or sends or brings an incarnation as a man. We're not told to worship that man as our God. And that's what Christianity is. And you can hear it out of their own mouth time after time. Jesus Christ is our God. Now, the problem is, did he come from Elohim? Yes, even Nicodemus said so. But Yeshua said, worship my Father. So this is a really serious problem. If Yahweh is Echad and says, do not regard any image, there's no difference then between saying those stupid other people who worship the sun as God. No, it represents God. Do not have a sun God. Isn't that the same as Jesus Christ is God? Now, I'm not saying that I don't believe that he and Yahweh have an Echadness and that he came from Elohim, but the fact that he is in a bet form, embodied as cosmos, matter, makes him no longer the Aleph. So the study of this Aleph bet is to zero in on the exact matters that he prescribed us to contemplate. And for us to say, gee, you better be careful about profaning Jesus, the Son of God. He's going to kick your butt. Man, one of these days you're liable to get that harpoon and be pitched into the lake of fire for saying such things. I realize that's the gamble. I realize if I'm wrong, talk about got hell to pay. Woo, boy, talk about flames. I trust the meaning of these letters. The Aleph is unspeakable. It's the silent letter. Some say the island is. We're going to stop in just a moment. Take a break. Some people say the IN is unspeakable too, but I believe it has a GH sound and it's given different phonetic vowel sounds. But the point is the Aleph is silent. Bereshit, first letter of the first word of the first book, Genesis 1:1, starts with the letter Bet. This is the universe. Who's the maker of the universe? It's referenced by the invisible, silent, unknowable Aleph. And as soon as we say, oh, it's Aleph, you've identified it. Now that puts it into Bet format because Bet is identifiable. It's a noun. Aleph can't be identified. It's silent, invisible, unfathomable, unknowable. But if we even say Aleph, we've now put Aleph into a Bet format. So embedded within these alphabet letters and the way they relate to each other are these mystical, esoteric relationships of the design of this whole place. So for us to say, what a conundrum, what a mystery, what an enigma of confusion. Who is Yeshua? Did he come from Elohim? Should we worship him or not? Thomas said, my God, good Lord. Oh, does that mean he's my Lord and my God? Kind of a joke. But the point is, Thomas doesn't establish doctrine. The Aleph-Bet does. The Aleph-Bet. So for us to worship the one who made the Aleph-Bet as the invisible, immaterial El Elyon, El Shaddai, Yahuwah Zavot, the names that he gave to reference him, I can't worship Jesus Christ as God. He's Echad with Yahuwah. What does that mean? What's the distinction between Aleph and Bet? He designed this problem. I didn't make it up, and I'm not trying to assign irreverence and blasphemy to sacred matters. I'm trying to engage the most kadosh of all things, his words, with human consciousness and heart at a infinite, not a finite, but at this infinite projection of a reality superseding anything we've ever been told, which is mapped and outlined by these letters. This is really significant. And the fact that this is the end of the curse, the obfuscating, the blurring, the hiding and distorting of all these things, I believe is this occasion of Kuf Zadi, that he has allowed us to engage present tense. What a grand, spectacular occasion this is. Anyway, we should take a break.